Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Sharon Oyella and today we are crocheting a chicken. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, then you already know about the turkey pattern that was released last week. This chicken head and body and the wings are pretty much identical to the turkey. The only difference will be the length in the neck and how we do this part here around the neck. So if you needed help to get you through crocheting through the front loops, how to crochet in the loops inside the neck, how to finish up the wings, and basic things like that, then you'll be watching the turkey video. And I do explain that in the written pattern. That brings us to the written pattern. This is free. That is popping up here in the iCard and also in the description box below. In the written pattern, I give you the abbreviation chart supplies list. I tell you how to read the rows. Make sure you read over that section. And I will also tell you about the video tutorials. So all the information is there. This video that you're watching right now is going to show you how to crochet row number 2 of the beak, how to crochet the comb, how to assemble the tail feathers. I'll also be showing you how to sew everything together. So sewing on those tail feathers, the wings, top and bottom beak, how to add a little tongue if you wanted to, how to sew on the comb, the wattle, the eyelids, and the feet. So there's lots of assembly help in this video should you need it. And if you need extra crochet help, then you'll be watching the turkey video. To make the chicken, I used an acrylic worsted weight yarn. This is Red Heart Comfort Yarn. You do not need to use the same brand. If you are in the UK, the closest weight to this is called Aran. So I used white, a little bit of yellow, and a little bit of red. With that yarn, I used a 4mm hook, a blunt end yarn needle, a pair of scissors, size 9mm safety eye, and 100% polyester stuffing. This is soft and springy. You want to find something similar to this, as you can sew through it with no clumping. On the package it says ideal for toys and pillows. If you use the same yarn and hook size that I did, then you should get a chicken about 5 inches tall. Alright my friends, it's time to get started. In the next clip we are going to be crocheting the comb together, and I do walk you through every stitch of the comb. So grab your crochet hook and let's get started. We are making the comb, the thing on top of the chicken's head, and I did film it in red, but it made the camera do funny things, so I'm going to refilm it using turquoise because the camera seems to like turquoise a lot better than red. So when you start the comb, we're going to make a slip knot, of course, before we start our chain. Make sure the starting yarn tail is long enough to be sewn into the head when we're all done. So I'm going to make my slip knot, and you can see my starting yarn tail has some good length to it that I can use when I'm all done. Row 1, chain 5. Starting in the second chain from the hook, there's the first one. Starting in the second one, we're going to put a single crochet in each one of those chains across. So when you go through, make sure you have 2 loops of the chain on top of your hook and 1 loop of that chain on the bottom. It just makes a stronger foundation chain. So when you're hanging on to this, it can be a little bit awkward because it's so small. I usually just use my fingernails, hang on to that little bit of yarn back there, get the yarn pulled through. Now I can hang on to the bunch of yarn underneath my hook and then pull the yarn through those 2 loops. And there is a single crochet in the second chain, and that's the one with the big loop. So you want to make sure you're getting into the next chain over. And single crochet into the next chain and into the last chain of the row. This is number 4. And we're finished row 2, and now we have 4 stitches across. From here, chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, starting in the second chain from the hook, 1 single crochet in the next 3 chains. Into the next chain. That's number 2. And into the last chain of this row, right here, number 3. And we're going to make 1 more of these, so chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, starting in the second chain, 1 single crochet in the next 3 chains. And last one, then we can finish off. And we are all done. Now we're going to finish off, leave a tail for sewing. Now red is traditional, but look at that turquoise, that would look actually kind of pretty up there. But we'll stick with red for this chicken, and we're going to move on now to make the beaks. Now we're going to make the beak, and it's made in two separate pieces, the bottom and the top. The bottom is just a ring with 6 single crochet stitches. So when you do this one, make sure that the starting yarn tail is long enough to work into the head. And when you're finished, if there's a gap here, just pull on the starting yarn tail to close up that gap. We don't want any gaps there. Now we can finish off. And this is the bottom beak, and that's going to get sewn in after we get the top one sewn in. So let's make the top beak together. You're going to do row 1, and then you're going to come back here and we'll carry on with row 2 together. So there's my loop with 6 stitches. My starting yarn tail is long enough to work into the head when I'm done. And from here I'm going to turn the circle. And I'm going to work this way. 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches. You can see the tops of the stitches here, the V's. Make sure you're going through those. 1 single crochet in the first. 1 single crochet into the second. And now 2 single crochets into the next 2 stitches. And again, if you can't see them, turn them towards you. You can see the tops of the V's. 2 single crochets in the next 2 stitches. That's 1 and 2, and now 2 into that next stitch over. 1 and 2, and now 1 single crochet in the final 2 stitches of the row. 1 single crochet, and then 1 single crochet in the last stitch of the row. And we're finished. Now we just have to finish off, leave a tail for sewing. You'll use this tail to sew the beak in place. Next we're going to assemble the tail feathers, and then I'm going to show you how to sew them onto the back of the chicken. And you can do this a number of different ways when you're sewing them on, but I'll just get you started here. So the middle tail feather, that's the one with 5, the yarn tail has already been weaved in. And then our larger piece, the one with 6 ruffles here, find the wrong side. So that's the right side. This is the wrong side. Take the middle tail feather, the one with 5, and place the wrong side over top that wrong side. And then we'll take our smallest piece, the one with 4 ruffles on it, and that wrong side will be placed over top like that. Okay, and I've already threaded my yarn tail, and I'm using the larger one here. And I'm going to whip stitch the bottom of the tail feathers together, just the bottom edge. So I'll bring my needle, here's the yarn tail here, bring my needle around and through all 3 pieces. Just pull the yarn through, and there's our first stitch, and I'm just going to keep doing that all the way down. Sewing these pieces together. Just takes a few stitches. And this one I'm going to knot off here. And then I'll just carry the yarn tail through the center of them, pull the yarn tail through, and I'll cut free from this one. And we're done with that yarn tail. And we'll use the other yarn tail to sew it to the back of the chicken. So let's bring this yarn tail up through the center first. And right here. We'll start sewing from this side. It'll just make it easier for sewing. So there's our piece assembled. So we just sewed the bottom edges together, and the ruffles are free-flowing on top. When I sew these tail feathers in place, the one with the 4 ruffles goes towards the back of the chicken. So the larger piece is facing to the outside. I'm going to use my eyes here as a guide for the center. You want them in the center. And then when you place it on the table, you want the bottom of the feathers to be on top of the table, level with the bottom of the chicken. So they should both be touching the table. Again, make sure you're really happy with how it looks before you sew it in, and you can also pin it in place if you need to. Okay, now I'm going to bring my first stitch in, just go right through the feathers. I'm going closer to the bottom part here, not up here where the ruffles are. I go right through and just bring my yarn needle out anywhere where it's comfortable. Pull on it so it's nice and snug, and then go back in that same stitch hole you just came out of and come up through the feathers again. Wrap over, down, and into the body, anywhere where it's comfortable. There, I can let go, and that's pretty much sewn in. I just want to add a few more stitches to make sure. I'll do around here. Alright guys, so when I sewed these in, I pulled the back of the feathers down, then the other one over top, and the other one over top that, and then I kind of sewed it in that way. So let's do that. Pull this down, and this down, and this down. And I'm going to bring my yarn needle. I want to get up closer to the center here. Okay, now I'll pull these down, and down, and down. And now I'll bring my yarn needle just underneath where the ruffles are starting to fold over and go into the body and out. Go back in the same stitch hole, and I'm going to come through the feathers and out through the back. Okay, pulling those down, and then I'm going to do another stitch here just underneath those ruffles and bring it through and out. Now it's all sewn in, and to shape these, I'm going to sew these tips down here down. So I'm going to go back in, and I'll bring my yarn needle up through the feathers. Now I can go through one of those end feathers there, pull the yarn through, and I'm just going to tack it down. So bring my needle down, and I'll come up over here where I want the other one to tack down. And you can play around with this, you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to go through the other end ruffle there and pull it down. Go through, and I'm just going to bring my yarn needle out anywhere so I can stop and adjust as I need to here. Okay, now I'm happy with that, so I'm going to go back in. Okay, now I'm going to go through. I go through the middle one, the end ruffle, pull the yarn through, and I'll tack this one down. Okay, I'm going to go through and then do the same with the last one up here. Okay, I'm happy with that, so I'm going to knot off. Go through that loop and pull tight. I'll do the other side now. Next we're sewing the wings in, and I would suggest pinning these in place and then setting it down and looking at it from all angles and making sure that you're happy with how it looks. So I'm going to place mine right here. They go pretty high just underneath this ruffle here around the neck. You don't want them too low, and you don't want the wings too close together in the front. So pretty much on either side of the head there. And what I do is just sew around this part here and leave the bottom free of stitches. So I'm going to go in and just bring the needle out anywhere where it's comfortable. Go back in the same stitch hole I just came out of and come up right about here. And I'm just going to whip stitch around the top of that wing, wrapping over and down into the body. And that's pretty much done already. I'm just going to add one more back here on the top. Okay, now I'm going to knot off and carry the yarn tail away and cut free. Eyelids are optional. You don't have to add them if you don't want to, but I'll show you how I do mine. I do go on a slant. I don't go across the top. So mine are on a slant. They kind of frame the eye on the outside. So I'm going to take a strand of yarn the same color as the head, and I'm going to bring it right through the top center, and I'm going to come out on the corner, pull that yarn through, and I'll leave a little bit of a tail hanging up there that I can knot off when I'm all done. And I'm going to wrap this over the eye, and I think right here, and then back through this way. And I'm going to wrap however many times it takes for me to like what I see. Usually about 5, 6, maybe 7 times. And don't pull so tight that you alter the shape. Just pull it in snug enough to get into place, and that's good enough. You don't need to pull super tight. I think that was what, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th one. And I'll do one more, and I'm going to bring it over here to the other corner, and I'll do the other eye. Okay, now I'll wrap this one until it matches the other one. Okay, I am done, so I'm going to bring my final wrap up here, and then I'll knot this off and carry it away and cut it free. Now we'll add the comb, and the tallest piece is in the front. And the front corner gets sewn in between the 2nd and 3rd row. You can see this row 1 is the starting hole. That's the ring that we started off with. So you count from there, 1, 2, 3. So the yarn tail gets sewn in between the 2nd and 3rd row. So I'm going to just pull it through and come out through a stitch hole in the back of the head. And I'll leave it hanging there for a second, and I'll get the other one ready to sew in. And then the back one gets sewn in between the 3rd and 4th. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I want to bring it right through here in the center. And I'll just come up right here. Bring that yarn tail through. I've come right out through the center hole, and I've pulled it into place. Want to make sure it's centered, everything looks great. Once you're happy with that, then you can go through the bottom of the comb. Bring the yarn tail through. This is a little bit too long to work with, so I'll cut some of it off. Now I'm going to go right into the center hole of row 1, and I'll come up in the back right beside the comb. Pull it through and go through the comb, bring the yarn tail through, and we are almost done. Okay, if you feel like it needs any more stitches, like this one looks a little bit loose up here, so I'm going to go right beside it, bring my yarn needle right up beside it, go through the bottom of the comb, pull it through, right down into the head beside it, and I'll come up in the back and that is pretty much done. So now I can knot this off. Let's see, I haven't come through there yet, so I'm going to come through and I'll just knot off right here. Go through and pull, and now that's knotted off and you can't see it. Now I'll just bring this yarn tail down and away from that area, and I will pull on it slightly and cut. It should spring back into the head. If you still see it there, then just reach in with your yarn needle and give it a swipe to get it out of the way. Now this one, we can just pull on it slightly and cut. Alright guys, let's sew that beak in place. And I've just threaded the starting yarn tail, the one in the center, with my needle. And if you look here, the wrong side of the beak or the wrong side of the circle is the part that we're looking at. Usually it's the other way around, but for this one, the wrong side will be facing up. So this is the right side. This is the wrong side. Okay, I'm going to bring my yarn needle in between the 5th and 6th row. I know this is the 5th and this is the 6th because that's where my eyes are sitting. So I'm going to go right in the center. And I'm bringing the starting yarn tail through. I'm going to go right through to the back of the head. And I'll just pull it into place. Now I'm going to thread my other yarn tail. And then the corner of the beak is going to get sewn in between the 6th and 7th row. Just bring your yarn needle right here and go out through the back of the head and pull it in. And that corner is sewn in and the middle is sewn in. So we just need to get this other corner sewn in and we're done. So we're going to go back in the same stitch hole we just came out of and come up in between the 6th and 7th row, right where that other corner is going to get sewn. Bring the needle through, pull the yarn through, make sure you haven't pulled anything in the back of your head, then go through this corner, pull the yarn through, and now bring the yarn needle right back through and out through a stitch hole in the back of the head. And that is sewn in. And pull on the yarn tail so everything's nice and snug up against the face. And I don't think I need any more stitches to hold it in there. Maybe I'll put one right here. I'll come up in between the 5th and 6th row, pull the yarn through, go through that end, bring the needle through, place it where I want it to go, and then bring my yarn needle right back through the 5th and 6th row and out through the back of the head. And that's done. Alright guys, I'm popping in with an edit. Just leave those yarn tails hanging out the back of your head. I've decided to show you how to knot them all off at the end after we get the bottom beak sewn in, so I can do it all at once and show you all at once instead of doing it twice. So just leave those yarn tails hanging for now. In the next clip we're going to sew in the bottom beak, and at the end of that then you can do all the yarn tails at the same time. Now the bottom beak, doesn't matter which side you sew up, because you're not going to really see it anyway. Just do the starting yarn tail first and bring it through the center underneath the beak. Right through here and out through the back of the head and pull it into place. Now thread the other yarn tail. Straighten the bottom beak out. It should act like a cap at the bottom. Now I want to bring that corner. I'll straighten this out so you can see. Now I'll bring the corner right into the corner where the other one is. Bring the yarn needle through to the back of the head and pull it through. Now go back through the same stitch hole you just came out of and come out through the corner of the top beak. Pull the yarn tail through. Now you're going to go back in, but just grab the corner of that bottom beak, going through it at the same time that you go back into the head and out through the back. So now it is sewn in place. Now all we have to do is just knot off these yarn tails. So I'm going to bring the first one through the same stitch hole that I came out of in the back of the head. And because I am going to sew the wattle over this little spot, I'm going to knot off right here because we're not going to see it anyway. So just pull it through. I'm going to wrap around a row there. Go through that loop and pull. Okay, I'm going to bring that yarn tail through the back of the head again and pull it through. And now that yarn tail is knotted off. You can't really see it there anyway, but it's going to be completely hidden once we get the wattle sewn in. So just pull on the yarn tail slightly and cut it free. Now I'm going to knot off the other one in the same spot and do the same thing. Carry it through the back of the head and cut it free. Because we sewed a lot through the back of the head, just make sure nothing's pulled back here, because sometimes you can pull the back in. So just, if you have done that, just reach in there with your yarn needle and straighten it all back out again. And there we go. Now that beak is sewn in place, and all we have to do now is add the wattle. So let's do that. Okay, the quickest way to sew the wattle, or wattle, I don't know how to pronounce it. The quickest way to sew it in, I don't think it really matters which side you choose to show. I've threaded both yarn tails. I'm going to bring it right underneath the bottom beak and come out to the back of the head. Bring those yarn tails through and pull until it's in place. And now I'm going to unthread one of these yarn tails. And I'll bring this, I can knot it off anywhere I want to. I could do it up here. Bring the yarn tail right up through here, it's the same color, and knot off up here. Now I'll just carry this away anywhere and then cut it free. Now one little fun feature, if you wanted to do this, you don't have to, totally optional. I gave the chicken a little tongue, so I brought my yarn needle through the center of those two beaks, bring it through, and I just knot it off in here. Now by this time you might be just totally done with sewing and you don't want to do this part, so don't even worry about it. It was just a little added feature I just decided to add. And then I just wrap my yarn in there a couple times. There it is. Now I'll just bring this yarn needle out to the back of the head. There we go. A little tongue with that yarn tail, and we actually knotted it off at the same time. But like I said, that's optional. You don't have to do it that way. Alright, now I just have to pull on it slightly and cut. All that's left is the feet, and what I do is just stick the chicken on a flat surface, and the row just above that flat surface is where you stick the feet, and they have about 5 or 6 stitch holes between them. So I'm going to bring my yarn through the bottom and come out where the first foot will go, kind of in line with the eye. And now I'm just going to wrap around this row and wrap about 7 or 8 times. That was 3. Okay, and that was 8. Now bring the yarn over about 5 or 6 stitch holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'll wrap over here until the foot matches the first one. That should do it. Now that I'm done, I'll bring the yarn tail out where the other one first came through, and I'll knot them together, and then I'll carry them away just like I showed you how to do on the other parts. Alright my friends, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed making yourself a chicken, and remember, if you did make one, I would sure love to see it. Post pictures on my Facebook page, Amigurumi Freely, or tag me on Instagram. Both those links are found in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that as well. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you super soon.